begins in Pittsburgh, where it wasn't clear in the immediate aftermath over the Steelers' win over the Colts whether or not they would give some of their key players the bye week that they never got this year because, as you'll remember, week 4, they practiced and prepared to face the Titans. That game got pushed back 3 weeks to their bye week, and then the Steelers spent their bye week practicing and preparing and ultimately playing. And then they've had their schedule screwed around and bumped around and moved around, and it was always someone else's fault, but they had to deal with the aftermath. Now the Browns will be dealing in a good way with the fact that the Steelers are planning to rest key starters, including quarterback Ben Roethlisberger, which means Mason Rudolph, Charean, as you said yesterday, will start against the Browns and Myles Garrett. Here is Mike Tomlin from earlier today explaining his decision to reporters.
One bye available in this single elimination tournament. We're not going to be that team. We made that bid, so we're prepared to lay in it. That's the most significant variable for us. And so that being said, given an opportunity to airmail a player or two to the postseason, we will. Ben will not be playing this week. We'll turn toward Mason Rudolph and our young quarterback positional group and give those guys an opportunity. We'll look potentially at resting some other guys in terms of making them inactive, but the number of those guys and who those guys are will be determined as we push through the week. Make no mistake about it. It does not change our intentions in terms of going to Cleveland this weekend. Football is our game. Our job is winning. We intend to do our job. We intend to prepare with that mindset and ultimately let our play lead us to that destination. We're not seeking comfort. We're not grading ourselves on the curve. This game is on the schedule. And so the guys that will be on the field will represent us, and the standard that is the Pittsburgh Steelers will be the standard.
Well, yes, it will be the standard, but we saw last year what happens when Ben Roethlisberger doesn't play. Mason Rudolph was not good. Duck Hodges was not good, although compared to Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges was pretty good. And now Mason Rudolph gets a chance to try to show people that by not playing this year, practicing, learning, studying, whatever, he's gotten better. The Steelers do not need the game. The Browns desperately do. It is a gift to the Browns. And I always say you want to keep division rivals out of the playoffs if you can, although between the Browns and the Ravens, I think the Steelers would be better off keeping the Ravens out if they could, not the Browns. I think the Steelers could deal with the Browns a lot more easily than they could deal with the Ravens. What do you think, though? Is this the right move for the Steelers to consciously take the foot off the gas when there's still a chance, in theory, to finish as the number 2 seed?
Well, one thing, Mike, that has gone unnoticed in all this is the change where only the top seed gets the bye this year. So if this was last year or the year before or whatever, the Steelers would be playing their starters this week because they would want to try to get that 2 seed to get the bye week, and then they would have their quote-unquote bye next week, right? But they can't do that with the change to the playoff format. Only one team gets that, and that's going to be the Chiefs this year. So they can rest their starters, and I get why they're doing it. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger has been banged up. There's no question about that. They didn't get their bye week, as you said. They've had a long stretch here, and they've talked a lot about being mentally and physically tired. So I get why they're doing it. At the same time, this is a football team that has not played good except for one half over the last 4 games, and that was the last half that they played. Can they take this week off and then continue what they did in the second half against the Colts? I don't know if they can do that or not. I do have some questions about how they've gotten back to where they are now and if they can get back to that 11-0 stretch the way they were playing, especially with all the defensive starters that they've lost, Mike. It's a tough call. I get it. If I am Mike Tomlin, I'd probably rest Ben Roethlisberger for sure this week, but I do go out and try to win this game to try to keep the momentum going.
Yeah, there's been this nagging question about whether and to what extent Ben Roethlisberger is injured. There will be reports from time to time, typically of the Sunday splash variety, that suggest Roethlisberger has knee problems. You look at the injury reports, no mention of any knee problems in recent weeks. Not since week 13 was he disclosed as having a knee issue. So it's unclear whether and to what extent he is healthy. He has recently said he's not 100%, but at this time of the year, no one is. The rest, though, I think will help him. It definitely can hurt him. And as Travis Kelce, the Chiefs tight end, told me on Sunday after they clinched the number 1 seed in beating the Atlanta Falcons 17-14. It's not a week off. It's a different week. You don't play a game, but you still practice. You work on your body. You work on your weaknesses. You prepare for your next opponent. You think about other things than playing a team that coming Sunday or Saturday, as the case may be in the wild card round. But still, it's a break from the grind. The week in and week out, knowing you've got a game coming up. And in the wild card round, obviously it's a game that could knock you out of the playoffs. For the Steelers, there's no downside to losing this game other than being the 3 seed. But I will say this. If it does come down to divisional round, Steelers-Bills, you'd rather the Bills come to Pittsburgh than have to go to Buffalo to play the Bills. But as Mike Tomlin weighs the various factors in his mind, because the Bills also would have to lose and the Steelers would have to win, and maybe you're out there burning up more of whatever Ben Roethlisberger has left in the tank and wasting it because the Bills beat the Dolphins, he decides that it's better to just say we'll go to Buffalo if we have to go to Buffalo, and we won't bring them here. And this reminds me of something T.J. Watt told me after the game this past Sunday, the idea that it's not the same in Pittsburgh, and they haven't gotten used to not having fans there. They have to find their own energy week in and week out. Maybe they can feed off of the negative energy that the 6,700 fans, if that plan is approved in Buffalo, will be throwing down to the field as the Steelers and the Bills get ready to play. So I understand why Tomlin is doing it, because in large part of the fact that they've had this screwy upside-down schedule. And if it means conceding the 2 seed to the Bills, so be it. In any other year, or in any past year when it would mean something like you said, or in any future year where having home field advantage means something more because you're playing those games in front of fans, I would say go for it. This year, I can understand why he's not doing it, especially because Ben Roethlisberger's been so rickety. Charean, I am curious to see how many other guys end up getting that game off. The defense seemingly needs the rest more than the rest of the offense. If anything, the rest of the offense needs the work.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Mike. And that defense has been banged up, and you would think they might rest the likes of T.J. Watt and some of those guys who've really been banged around this season. And I am curious, too, if this prompts the Buffalo Bills now to take a rest week for some of their starters, knowing that the Steelers are going to be doing the same thing. I know they've said repeatedly they're going to play to win, but knowing that the Steelers are going to rest some of their starters, maybe this changes what Sean McDermott wants to do this week against the Dolphins. But this could completely change, Mike, how the wild card race turns out. If the Colts end up playing all their starters and the Steelers don't, it could completely change how this thing unfolds for these teams fighting for the wild card berth.
Well, and that's right. And look, I look at the Bills right now, and they are in this mode where they are trying to prove themselves week in and week out. And they're trying to convince themselves, more themselves than anyone else, that they are an elite team. And when you look at their last 4 games, and really their last 5, dating back to the bye, I wrote something earlier today about comments from Bills safety Micah Hyde regarding what the Hail Murray did for them. And since the bye week, which immediately came after the Hail Murray loss to the Cardinals, it's been double-digit win after double-digit win. And the margin the last 2 weeks, 86, I believe, to 28 between the win over the Broncos and the win over the Patriots. They are proving to the world and themselves that they are one of those special teams, that they are peaking at the right time. I don't know that you'll want to consciously give that up in exchange for some rest that your team, by all appearances, doesn't seem to need. Keep the momentum rolling and also take advantage of the opportunity to knock the Dolphins out of the playoffs, because you typically don't want to face a division rival in a winner-take-all, win-or-go-home type of a setting, because a division rival is not going to be afraid of you, intimidated by you, and they're going to relish the chance to come into your building and end your season if they can. One thing about the Browns as they try to go forward with avoiding a 10-6 finish to the season that would knock them out of the playoffs like in 2007. Tight end Harrison Bryant, safety Andrew Sendejo placed on the reserve COVID-19 list earlier this afternoon. Not clear whether that means they tested positive. We had the rash of close contacts over the weekend. Not good for the Browns, though, if it is a sign, Charean, of some sort of lingering problem that is popping up positives days after the fact as the incubation period continues to hit different guys who have gotten it. And then as they shed virus before they're removed from the population, they can expose other guys to it. So this is going to be something that the Browns should be worried about all week long.
Absolutely, Mike. And they saw what happened last week when they were without a receiving core. They had one receiver off the active roster and lost the Jets, and that played a big part in that loss, or they'd already be in the playoffs, and they're not there. And now they're faced with a must-win game when they may be missing some other key players this week. But you've got to go on and play with the cards you're dealt, and this is what they're dealt with, and then go beat the Steelers without Ben Roethlisberger and assure themselves a playoff berth. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take beating Mason Rudolph this week. And you know what? If you can't beat the Jets and or the Mason Rudolph, you don't deserve to go to the playoffs.
I was just formulating that same thought. If you can't beat Mason Rudolph with a postseason berth on the line, then Baker Mayfield and the Browns aren't ready to go to the postseason. And I understand what happened last week. It was a strange curveball, although we've known all year that any given team in every given week could face that kind of a curveball. It's still hard to process it. This week, unless a bunch of guys end up unavailable without enough time to adjust, the Browns should be able to beat the Steelers if Mason Rudolph is playing quarterback, unless he has discovered some untapped reservoir of football ability and talent that we previously have not witnessed. All due respect to Mason Rudolph.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.